Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog, John Martin, as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped up. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog, John Martin, and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning and happy Monday morning to everyone out there. Welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, featuring the old salty dog here hosting your show, John Martin, and from the Keys, live, the captain of our pirate ship, Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted.
Morning, everybody. Good to see you, John, and you're looking good there up in the studio.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I want to make a quick mention at the top of the show. I'm here in studio at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point in Gainesville, Florida. And I just want to let people know that tonight is a very special night here in the restaurant. It is the 4th anniversary, and they have tickets still on sale. You can check out, I guess, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill online. But I have it from a very, very reliable source that the old ball coach, none other than Steve Spurrier himself, and many other guests will be here. So if you'd like to meet the old ball coach or see him again and certainly have a great meal and an incredible atmosphere, come down to Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. I think it's from 5 to 9 tonight, the 4th anniversary. Well,
it'll be a great time. It'll be a great time, great food, and great people.
Well, you'll probably have to parachute in to get here in time from the Keys, but
probably,
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, let's get right into it, Ted, because the big news coming out of the weekend is that Donald Trump is going to be meeting with Vladimir Putin somewhere in Alaska. They have not actually disclosed as of the timing of this meeting where it's going to be, but I'm going to use a little bit of a Fox News template to get into that. Let me just start by asking you, Ted, in general, what do you think about, we're going to get into what details we know in just a minute, but in general, what do you think about having a summit in Alaska? It looks like it's going to be just Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and whoever else they bring. At the moment, it doesn't look like Zelensky is going to be a part of it directly, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But when you first heard this news, what was your general feeling, Ted?
I was thinking they're going to do it at Sarah Palin's house since she can see Russia from there.
There you go.
No, I think it's a good thing, but I think, Putin's playing a very hard hand because Trump wanted Zelensky there, and he's not there. So I can only think that that's pressure from Putin saying, no, we're not meeting with Zelensky. I think it's a very important meeting. I think it's the beginning of the negotiations on getting Russia to come to some terms on ending that war. I mean, it's gone on for as long as it has. Russia's a huge country, the second largest military in the world, or between the second and third largest military in the world, and they can't, end the war with Ukraine. You would think they'd just go in there and pulverize them. And I think it's a wake-up call for them to come to another conclusion. And this will give him a way to kind of bow out gracefully and bring this to an end. And I think that would be wise counsel for him to do that. And I think it's a bold move on President Trump's. This is where we're really going to see Trump exercise the art of the deal.
Well, you talk about Putin likely vetoing Zelensky being there. And when I say this, I'm not saying that I agree with what I'm about to say, but I think it's a factor. And that is that from Putin's perspective, he is, even though he's president, and in fact, any communist country, you're basically a dictator until they take you out.
Sure.
But, from his perspective, Ukraine has always been a vassal state, so to speak, if I'm getting that term right. And yeah. I think he is worried for his own political self about putting Zelensky at the same level that he is, and dictators have to worry about that. So,
it's all optics.
Yeah, I think that's
it's all
a factor in it. For sure.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, they really do. And if you look at the history of Ukraine, I mean, this thing goes back to I think the 1400s, where they were a nation, they were a kingdom, they got taken over, usually by the Prussians or Russians. And, it's been going back and forth. And under Stalin, they killed millions of Ukrainians, but the Ukrainians came back every time because they wanted their own dependency, and they fought to have their own country for hundreds of years. And Russia's always been the spoiler. And I think you're absolutely right. If Putin shows any signs of weakness, he's in jeopardy. And, the only reason he's in power is because he's got the KGB, or what used to be the KGB. And it's like that person they killed in jail that was going to be his opposition that they poisoned, and then he wound up dying in jail. And so Putin has everything on the line on this meeting and how the outcome of that turns. And I would think he would want to find a plausible way to come out saving face. Because remember, if you want to talk about oligarchs, that's where all the big oligarchs are, is over in Russia. And they control and they allow Putin to be in charge as long as it's not too painful for them. But there's a lot of pain on those people right now with the sanctions and restrictions on where they can go, the seizing of their mega yachts and all that. And so, there's a lot of internal pressure on him.
Yeah. And, what sometimes frustrates me is when you start talking about the various issues and the history of it, the left especially wants to immediately say, oh, you're defending Putin. No, I'm just trying to understand the mindset. And you need to understand the mindset of people when you're going to try to get with them. And one of the things that Americans in general, and I'm painting with a broad brush, that we lack sometimes is historical perspective. When you look at that part of Europe, and Ukraine leads the way in this, that area of Europe has never really, for any length of time, been a bunch of independent countries. They've basically been principalities, vassal states, many little kingdoms. That whole section of Europe has been dominated by one side, one major country or the other, really since the beginning of time.
Oh, really has. But that's a good point. You brought it up. That's just the way it was always done. You'd have these bigger states that would allow these little kingdoms or fiefdoms to exist, provided they paid alms and taxes to the bigger house. And it's been that way ever since, until the United States of America came around. Actually, it started with the Magna Carta and things like that, where the fiefdoms and the lords of the lands would say, we're not giving the king absolute power anymore. And so it started to change there, and our founders got it right when they did the Declaration and the Constitution.
Yeah,
that was the first time we got away to self-governing.
And the thing is, Europe in general and other parts, the United States, we tend to forget this. Our history, as glorious as it is but a blip in history. We're only talking like 300 years basically that we've,
at 250
best, as a nation,
300.
but 300 really that we've been an issue in this part of the world. For the rest
of
the world.
I want to interject there, because I was listening to a news feed right before this, and it was from the University of Florida, and they were interviewing students at the University of Florida, our alma mater, with the gator helmet right behind you, talking about the Constitution. And the lack of information and ignorance of these people that are college students that are going to be the leaders of the world at some capacity, and voters, hopefully, how they're saying that thing is outdated, needs to be torn apart. And I'll send you that. Maybe we can do a show on Friday on that.
That'd be good, and I agree with you, it's frightening to me, the lack of knowledge that people who should have it, like you mentioned, students should have it, that they don't have. And the frightening thing about that is it clouds your perspective of what's happening in a complicated world. But it also, and this to me is the more significant part, and one of the reasons I started doing a show, and I believe we're doing a show together, is because we could be taken out. We're just a flicker in the darkness, so to speak. This freedom is an experiment. I say United States of America is an experiment. And if we think we're just going to last forever based on some kind of divine intervention, is lack of perspective. And I worry about people not understanding the uniqueness of America, not because I want us to be, all that in a bag of chips and dominate the world, but we are much fragiler than people totally realize.
No, there's no doubt about that, John. And in fact, I was reading something the other day. When you look at all great empires, you go back to the Greeks, the Mesopotamians, the Persians. You look through all of those, the Ottoman Empire, the Roman one in particular, they got so big that they couldn't maintain it with the Roman allegiance, with people that were Romans. And so they started bringing in migrant help. And it got to the point where the migrant help said, screw this, we're going to take it over. And that led to the fall of the Roman Empire. This is happening in Japan. Japan's got an elderly population, so they're bringing in migrants. And, I hate to see anything happen to Japan, but it can happen there. It's going to happen in China because they have a population that is not self-sustaining as far as birth rates. And you look at the European Union, you look at us, and look at how much the European Union, primarily Great Britain, but all those countries, how much the face of them have changed. They're not the Anglo-Saxons of the UK. It is a multicultural face on there. They may have the British accent, but it's a different population than it was 30 years ago. You and I can never stop that, and it's happening here in America. You and I can never stop it. But the things that we can fight, and that's what our program is for, is to educate, motivate, and activate people, is to stand up for those core values, the founding principles that created America and allowed for the American dream to be built by anybody that works within the systems and the confines of laws and takes advantage of opportunity that we have better than any other country. And that's what these people at the University of Florida, these students, they're not getting that. And so you look at the Trump administration, is there cause to revamp the Department of Education? You bet there is. And, we need to get back to the very basics.
Yeah. And we definitely need to be a melting pot. And if you're coming to America, have pride in your background and all that, no issue with that. But be part of the melting pot and realize that you need to be an American first, period. No matter
have you heard
your color, creed, or whatever it is.
Have you heard Arnold Schwarzenegger talk about this? It wasn't too long ago. And he was talking about immigration. And I know we're off subject here, but I thought it was, and I'll put this together for you. But he basically said, I came here as an immigrant. He goes, I wanted to be in the land of opportunity. He goes, but as immigrants come here, immigrants have a responsibility too. Your responsibility is to work within the system of this country and make it a better country, a stronger country, not tear it apart. And this was after, he endorsed Kamala Harris, I believe. And so he gets it, but I think he's trying to protect his Hollywood image so that maybe they'll put him in another expendable.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, let's get back on topic here. What we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen.
Bring me back, Don. Bring me back.
Well, no, it's as much my fault as any. But if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the meeting that is supposed to take place this Friday somewhere in Alaska between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. So check this out. Ted, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said Sunday President Donald Trump will use the upcoming summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin to test how serious Putin is about ending the war with Ukraine. That's an interesting perspective. What do you think about that, Ted?
No, I think it's a very good thing. Mark Rutte couldn't be saying this had Trump not put pressure on NATO to build up the military, to where Germany is putting in $1 trillion into defense spending, because that plays into this. Because now Putin says, well, it's not just us in the United States that are negotiating. We've got this massive NATO that Mark Rutte is standing up and saying this. And I think it's a good thing, because the more you have standing up against Putin, the stronger the message will be coming from Trump. And keep in mind, all those countries that border Russia are NATO members, or the majority of them. Ukraine's not. But when Putin sees people like Latvia and Estonia or some of these other countries getting out of the demining treaty, that they wouldn't put any mines on their border anymore, and these countries are doing that. It's got to give him pause that maybe this wasn't a good idea and I should back off of Ukraine, take what little victory I can, and let's move on. So I think it's a good thing. I think what Mark Root said was good.
Well, speaking of Mr. Root, he said that the upcoming meeting is an important step. I thought that was interesting in the process of reaching full-scale peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. So my question really, Ted, is do they, when I say they, I'm talking about Zelensky and Putin, do they truly want peace? I mean, I know that each one individually wants it in a sense, but do they want it to the extent that they're willing to compromise and come to some agreement? I'm hoping so, because that's the only way it's going to be resolved.
That's the only way it's going to be resolved. And I don't know if I can answer that question other than, did the Japanese and Nazis want peace before it got so painful that they had to accept peace? And I don't know if it's gotten painful enough. Putin, I would think, would be the smartest thing for him to do is come to some kind of a peace agreement for now. We know it's going to be temporary because of what he said. Wherever a Russian boot is, it's Russian soil. And Zelensky's lost, I forget how much land they've lost, but they've given up some land. And I would think Putin would be wise, especially with this president in the White House, to take some kind of conciliatory victory and just saying, yeah, we brought peace, and take the win on that and save face, because he's in a non-winnable situation. And I say that because the way Ukraine has held on against a superpower for this long with an army that really wasn't prepared for what Putin did. And then you look at the other nations rising up, preparing for war. And so Putin would be wise to take some kind of a peace deal.
Absolutely. Let's hope that he has that wisdom. But NATO Secretary Root said that about this upcoming meeting that it will be about territory, and you just mentioned that. Something came out within the last 2 weeks that I had not really heard, but Zelensky brought it out, that according to the the Ukrainian Constitution, in order to cede territory, there has to be a national referendum. I don't know if you'd heard that. I had not heard that prior to about 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
That really complicates the issue. And it makes me go back, because I don't know if this was in their constitution before, but Obama let Putin have Crimea when he was in
Oh, no
there.
doubt.
And that's probably one of the jewels of that whole area, Crimea. So if this is true that they need a national referendum, it's really going to complicate the situation.
It's going to complicate it, but yet it becomes a bargaining chip too. How bad do the Ukrainian legislators, how bad do they want to go ahead and have peace so they can weigh in on this? And think of this: if Zelensky engages their political parties and the parties vote for this, it's not Zelensky making this as a unilateral peace offering or peace deal. He's got the backing of the legislators of Ukraine. And so it saves face for him too. And that would be the smartest thing to do. It is in their constitution, as it is in ours, that, you're not going to cede land from the United States, period. Unless it's California, then we'd be happy to let that go. And New York City.
Well, this is a complicated issue, and I want to dive down into it a little bit more. But I want to go ahead and we'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back and kind of finish up on this story. So if you'd like to be a sponsor of our show, look at the tagline. It says Contact Freddie, and help us out there. Support our sponsors, like what we're doing, and share it far and wide, because it's very important, Ted.
Yep, and I agree. And we look forward to having you as sponsors, and share us far and wide, and tell your friends and family. And we look forward to coming back here after the break.
All right, we'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth.
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
Welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, featuring yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and the captain of our ship, Ted Yoho. Well, when we went to break, Ted, we were talking about the upcoming summit that's supposed to be this Friday in Alaska between Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump. And Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Roots, the one that called Trump Daddy, he made some comments about this, and I want to kind of break it down, if we could, Ted, really sentence by sentence, because I think that it really spells out the overall framework and what the sides are up against. So what Mr. Root said, talking about the summit this Friday, he said it will, of course, be about security guarantees. And that's something Zelensky mentions a lot of times. What exactly does that mean? Because I think I know what it means, but it's potentially troubling. What do you think about that, Ted?
Well, I think this is all probably the crux of this. You know, can you really get security guarantees? I've got a thing that popped up here. Can you get security guarantees from Russia? Keep in mind, when Russia went into Crimea, there were security guarantees that brought that conflict to an end. And remember, those were the little green men marching in that had no national insignia on their shoulders. They were the Wagner group from Russia. And of course, Putin took care of Vittori, that was in charge of the Wagner group. What happened when he went into Crimea, there were 2 security meetings or treaties, because they were called Minsk I and Minsk II, M-I-N-S-K. Those were the agreements that they agreed on when Putin invaded Crimea. The first one held for about, it went from September to maybe January or February of the preceding year, and it fell apart. And they started to the war again. And during that time of the peace agreement, Putin was arming and building up his military at the border of where they agreed the border was, and then he marched forward. And then they had another peace agreement with security guarantees, and Putin broke it, obviously, when he went into the Ukraine again. And so those are things that when they're established, John, and they come to terms, there needs to be worldwide pressure on free liberal democracy states that say we're going to hold Russia accountable. It can't be Ukraine. They're not big enough to hold them accountable. It can't be just us, because now it's the bad, evil United States dictating to Russia what they can and can't do. But if you have all of NATO standing up, and I think the presence of what NATO is doing is a strong signal to make sure those security guarantees are withheld. And I think if they can do that, then you'll see a different ball game, and you'll have a longer lasting peace. For how long, I don't know, but it'll be definitely stronger than anything they have right now, or the first Minsk 1 and 2 treaties.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Root, the Secretary of NATO, he's also said, but talking about the meeting, but also about the absolute need to acknowledge that Ukraine decides its own future, that Ukraine has to be a sovereign nation deciding on its geopolitical future. And that really sounds good, but it's not as simple as that. And what I'm thinking about, Ted, is, and you've mentioned this many times, that Trump shouldn't have said, I'll end that war on day one, kind of thing. He misstepped there. But one thing he has said that I think, and we'll never know, obviously, that if he'd have been president, the war would have never happened. And why that is so important is because it's a lot easier to prevent a war than to stop a war. Because once a war starts, there are other issues that come in that weren't there before.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Donald Trump has proven that he's pretty good at doing that. So if anybody can step in now and do it, it would be him.
It really is. And, had Trump been in there, I don't think Putin would have gone in there. But now that it's happened and Trump has come out with that rhetoric, I'm going to stop the war on day one, he's lost credibility. Putin's going to try him. He's going to challenge him. He's going to test his resolve to see how strong he's going to be. And, but this is I think it's an opportunity for both those leaders, including Zelensky, to come to the table, get this under control. And as you brought up earlier in the show, Ukraine has always been viewed kind of as a vassal state, meaning that they fall under the control of Russia one way or another. And, they meddle in their politics, they meddle in their law enforcement and their rule of law. And that's something you've got to have, that sovereignty. And again, I was an advocate of putting Ukraine into NATO when they were applying, but the other people didn't want them in there because they thought it would incite Putin to do what he's doing now. And so the heck with them, at some point, let them in the NATO, because it'll make NATO stronger and be more of a deterrent for Putin in the future. But the geopolitical future is going to depend on how this the negotiation works out. And I hope the best for Donald Trump, Zelensky, and I hope Putin can come to a favorable term where he can save face and move on from there. He's lost a lot of his future generations in this war.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, one of the things that came out, and we talked about it on our Friday show a little bit, is that Putin has been pulling troops from the eastern side of Russia, or conscripts, I guess you could say, to the eastern side, and has been paying money to the families when they lose people. And so he has tried to keep Mother Russia, if you want to call it that, the core of his support. He's tried to kind of shield them from the impacts of the war. How long that up, I don't know.
Well, you look at this too, people will serve their nation when it's under the threat of an attack or for national security. This was an expansionism policy of Putin. He wanted that property back. He wanted Ukraine back under their control. And a lot of people over there don't agree with that. And of course, you don't hear about it because the Russian government and the ex-KGB, they're all over everybody and monitoring everybody. And so people are afraid to speak out. And that's what you have when you have an authoritarian government. but it's hard to garner people to serve in a volunteer army, which isn't a volunteer army. Keep in mind too, John, that he's brought in over 20,000 troops from North Korea who have no reason to be there other than Kim Jong-un says, you go or I'll kill you and your family. And so you've got people fighting not for a cause, but because they're being told to fight. And it's not their fight, a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big difference.
Well, Root, the head of NATO, this NATO Secretary General, he said, now this part is really complicated right here to me, Ted. He said, of course, having no limitations to its own military troop levels, talking about Ukraine, and for NATO to have no limitations on our presence on the eastern flank in countries like Latvia, Estonia, and Finland. So essentially, he's not quite saying that the Ukraine needs to be in NATO, but it sounds like they'll be almost in NATO. And that's going to be a hard pill for Putin to swallow, because if you believe what he says, and I'm not saying you should, but it sounds a lot like what he was justifying reasons for going into Ukraine to start with,
right,
was to prevent them from going into NATO. So this is going to be very tricky. And I think Donald Trump is the most capable one to get it done, but it's not a done deal for sure.
Oh, no. And Trump's a wild card, and that's the thing in his favor. But what you just brought up is exactly what we were talking about, because Putin is using his expansionism to prevent Ukraine from going into NATO. The mere fact that he invaded Ukraine is the reason Ukraine should be in NATO, because they would have that backing of NATO. And what's his name? Putin would never have gone into Ukraine had that happened. And I think as this plays out in the negotiation, Putin is going to say Ukraine cannot be part of NATO. You're going to see that come out, and that's going to have to be hashed out. But keep in mind, whatever he comes out and says they're going to adhere to security guarantees, put a date down and just watch how long it lasts. I bet it wouldn't last a year.
Well, an interesting question too is, no matter what happens coming out of there, how are the Democrats going to respond to it? Because they've already started, Ted. Some are calling.
Are they still around?
Oh yeah, they're still here hanging out. But some have called for Putin's arrest immediately upon touching U.S. soil, because there is a warrant from his arrest from the World Court. So they're calling for that, which would be the start of World War III if that were to happen. And this is the one that really gets me. Some say that Trump is having a meeting in Alaska because he's prepared to surrender Alaska back to the Russians. I mean, to me, that is just ludicrous to even mention. But that's what some of their pundits are saying.
It must have been AOC or Jasmine Crockett that said that. These people, they're just so ignorant about world affairs. So many of these people, or world history of how things came to be. I can see the Democrats, anything to do with Trump and Putin, they're going to marry them together, and they're working against the democracy or our constitutional republic.
Well, I came up with this video, and I got to warn people, it's Nancy Pelosi in the morning, so that's something.
You're killing me, John. You're killing me.
But if you wonder how they're going to respond after the fact, so I think, the thing about future results, prediction and all that, here is how Nancy Pelosi responded to the first time that Donald Trump and Putin met back during Trump's first time. Check this out. It's only about
Instead of standing up for our democracy and democratic principles, President Trump cowered in the presence of Putin, and the entire world watched and saw that. Trump's eagerness to sell out America proves the Russians must have something, personally, politically, or financially, on President Trump. As DNI Dan Coates has said, the intelligence community has stated the Russians are once again waging a campaign to interfere in our elections. But President Trump continues to take the word of Russians, enthusiastically embracing their excuses, and the president gave a green light to continue to attack our democracy to the Russians.
Well, there you have it, their response from the last time. And I love how they're talking about all these, intelligence experts that Donald Trump besmirched. And, the history has proven that he probably understated it. He was right about all of that. But what are your thoughts on that, Ted?
My thoughts are, I'm glad she's gone as Speaker of the House. And I hope you put this link on the website so people can watch it, especially when it goes into Adam Schiff. Shifty shift, and I know why Trump calls him that. Watch his eyes go back and forth like he's looking to see if anybody believes what he says. The whole thing, it ties into Russian collusion and how Trump worked with Putin to overturn the election. But now that we know the facts, and these facts have been known, but the American people are waking up to them, that it was the Democrat Party that was the ones colluding, not so much with Russia, but against Trump winning the White House. And it just shows again, John, I think it's a great reminder of why the current Democrat Party, socialist, Marxist, communist, whatever you want to call them, the liberal side of that part of America, we cannot afford to allow them to be in power in government. They can participate, but they can't have the reins and control it like they did under Biden and Obama.
Yeah, well, that's a great suggestion. I will put the whole video up of that response later today.
Yeah, because we could do a whole show on how they were saying it's an attack on our democracy. And you look at what they've done over the last 4 years, that was an assault on our country.
I love that attack on our democracy from the party that most recent history didn't even have a primary, froze RFK out, didn't even have one when Biden dropped out, and put Kamala Harris, anointed her as the nominee, who had never won any national election, didn't even make it to the Iowa caucuses in her first go round, and yet they're saying that Trump is a threat to democracy. It's just unbelievable.
Right.
Well, the last time, we're going to end on this on a high note, Ted, this particular story. Donald Trump and Putin did actually get along pretty well the first time they met, and I think we got a picture of it. Check it out.
That's a great picture. You need that one in contrast with Obama on the race cars and the go-karts.
Well, obviously it's Photoshop, people, so don't freak out. But
yeah, really. What? That is just a great contrast. I mean, contrast that with Rachel Levin and Sam Brinton from the Biden administration to Pete Hegseth, Sean Duffy. Pete Buttigieg over on the Biden, Sean Duffy on the Trump side. I mean, just difference of optics, not just optics, but in performance.
Yeah, well, Ted, I'm always putting a little comical angle out there because
you sure are.
I take what we talk about very serious, but I don't take myself all that serious. All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit, because another story that we talked about it on Friday, but it just keeps getting more rhetoric and heated up, and that is the whole redistricting issue. Both the Democrats and the Republicans are turning up the heat on the redistricting issue, and it's centered around Texas, but it is spilled out really across the whole nation. What are your overall thoughts on where we are with this and where it's going right now?
Overall thoughts are, it's the right of the people of their states to have redistricting, and it goes through their legislators that they elect. And this has gone on since the beginning of time, John. And it's going to continue to go on. We hope the process is as fair as it can be. But if you want to look at one of the most gerrymandered districts in America, look at Corinne Brown's seat that was drawn up by the Democrats under Lott and Child, that drew up a gerrymandered district that went from the state line between Florida and Georgia all the way down to Orlando. Some areas only a half a street wide, to get certain populations so that she could support them. And, this is an adjustment that needs to be made, especially when you see states like New York, York, California, all the liberal states, and the liberal areas of big states like Texas, where they get in there and they take the spoils of their victories. And it needs to be more balanced than that.
Yeah, I tell you, if you want to you talk about the redistricting maps, most of the Democrats fled to Illinois. And if you look at that map of Illinois, there is a district they carved out kind of in the center of the state, and it looks like a chopped up jigsaw puzzle. I mean, it's
really, that's a good analogy, a jigsaw piece. You look at Alachua County. I mean, it's the red or the bluest portion in the state of Florida, I think.
Absolutely. We're to San Francisco or the South here. But I want to play a video if we've got it pulled up here. This is J.D. Vance. He was interviewed, I'm just going to play a short snippet. He was interviewed on Sunday, and he was talking about the reasons why the Republicans need to do this redistricting in Texas and some other places. And he made some very interesting points, especially about the census. Check this out.
Years ago that, for apportioning representatives, you actually count illegal aliens. So even though illegal aliens theoretically are not supposed to vote, we know sometimes they do, you still count illegal aliens for congressional apportionment. So California has way more House seats than it should because they have such a high population of illegal aliens. So they get rewarded for welcoming illegal aliens into their state, giving them federal benefits, actually asking the taxpayers of states like Ohio to subsidize them, and then those same taxpayers in Ohio and Indiana and elsewhere, they have fewer congressional representatives because of what California has allowed to happen. That's ridiculously unfair, and the only real way to fight back against it is for us to redistrict in some ways as aggressively as these hard blue states have done.
Well, that's I tell you what, J.D. Vance is impressing me more and more all the time. Tim. Yeah. It shows that Donald Trump, made a pretty wise choice there. And as a side note, before we talk about what he said, Donald Trump, they accuse him of retribution and all that kind of stuff. Well, J.D. Vance said some pretty harsh things about Donald Trump early on, and Donald Trump forgave him for that, accepted, the J.D. Vance we have now, and put him on his team, much like he did Tulsi Gabbard, who voted for one of the articles of impeachment. So this idea that Donald Trump is naturally vindictive is simply not proven out by his own actions.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Trump, he's smart enough, obviously smart enough, but, he takes a step back, he analyzes it and moves forward, makes a decision. And he's not ashamed or afraid to say, hey, I was wrong on that. And he moves forward. He's serving the country. I'm so happy he's there right now. I mean, with the chaos that we had going and the political upheaval that could have happened had Kamala Harris won, this country would be over. And so I'm so thankful he's there at this point in time in history.
Well, J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, in his comments we just played, made a key point about the census and saying that, that we count illegal immigrants in the census. And he made specific points about these sanctuary states like California that welcome all these people in there. And basically it gives them not only an unfair advantage in their representation, but it takes away representation from other places. And he makes a great point there, Ted.
He really does. And this is something I think we really need to delve into more right now, because our job is to educate people. You take a state like California, and I forget their population, it's 34, 40 million people. All right. So they've got that population, and for people to be counted in the census workers don't ask if you're illegal or not. They can't ask that. That was under the Biden and Obama administration. And so those numbers get counted. So say you've got a population, and keep in mind, the English proficiency in California is less than 54% in the schools. And so when you're counting this population, if they're here illegally, which doesn't register on the government census, that gets counted. So if you've got a town that's, say, 100,000 people, and half of them are illegal, that town gets 100,000 people, so it goes into getting more people in the Senate and the House that represents that area. It also brings more money from Washington, D.C., American taxpayer money, going into that district for the population, not for the U.S. population or the U.S. citizens, for the population in a whole. And so it really is a very bad system. It's a system that was set up to favor the Democrats, and they're the ones that are fighting hard against us. And Trump is changing this. This is a real smart move. And the benefit from this, John, will be played out over the next 10, 15, 20 years for America.
Yeah, well, going back to Vance's comments about illegal immigrants and how they, affect the census and all, I want to play a snippet from Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles, very short snippet. And
we do need a comic relief.
Yeah, she's talking about ICE raids here, but if you listen to what she's saying, in my view, and we'll come back and talk about it, she is validating exactly what Vance just said. Check out Mayor Karen Bass in her own words.
And cruelty of immigration raids in the city. We have seen how they have impacted families. It destabilizes a community, but we are not going to allow this administration to destabilize our great city.
And it's not high taxes, crime, or regulation.
I'm
far
sure
left
she
there.
didn't mean it this way, but when I hear Karen Bass in that comments talking about these ICE raids and arresting illegal immigrants and criminals and all of that kind of stuff, she said it is destabilizing LA, the economy, and in general. So to me, she's admitting that having illegal immigrants and criminals to boot inside Los Angeles is a benefit to Los Angeles. And I would carry it a step further. It's a benefit to them politically. And she basically is admitting exactly, in my view, what J.D. Vance's point was.
No, absolutely. I mean, you think about it, she's concerned about who's going to mow the lawn, who's going to clean the hotel room, who's going to prepare the food, who's going to pick the food, who's going to wipe your behind, like that other lady said, that other legislator. And it exemplifies exactly what you just pointed out, John. There's such a high illegal immigration population in those cities, they don't know how to live without it. And keep in mind, what they're doing is they're driving down wages, but they're forcing the minimum wage up. And so those are driving businesses away that are creating more unemployment. And it's just a terrible cycle. And the best way to do it is bring it to an end and get these people counted for who they are. They're occupants of the United States of America. They're not citizens. They don't deserve the appropriations to go there unless that's to help deport them. And hopefully they take advantage of Trump's and Homan's and Kristi Noem's policy that will pay you to leave. And I think they would be wise counsel to heed that.
Absolutely. Well, getting back to this redistricting, because the Democrats are trying to hold out in Texas, which is kind of the epicenter of this now, and not show up so they can't have a quorum. Well, Texas Governor Abbott said that that's not going to work because I can call a session every 30 days. I can call a session. Yep. He said, when this session ends, which is about 2 weeks out, if they're not back, I'm just going to call another 30-day session until we get this done. So he seems pretty determined.
He is, and that's what should be done. I pleaded with President Trump when I was in office in his first term that they're taking a recess break and we didn't finish our business. And I told them that, I sent them a letter and asked them to respectfully consider calling Congress back in session until they complete their work. And it didn't happen, but this is a tool that the executive branch has. And Governor Abbott is doing that. And I think it shows wise moves on his part. And I would like to see President Trump do that more, force these people to do their work. And he can do that. Call them in every 30 days or until they finish. And, it's time to stop being the nice guy and move on.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure this lady is becoming one of your favorite people, and probably one of the reasons why you wish you were still in Congress, Ted, sometimes, is so you could have had the benefit of serving with Jasmine Crockett.
You're killing me, John.
You got the honor of serving with AOC, and you actually served with Karen Bass, but you missed Jasmine Crockett, Ted. I mean, think about that. How much improved your life would be had you been serving.
She's a shining star of the Democrat Party, and I don't know what poll put her at it, but she's one of the leading contenders for the senator from Texas. Give me a break.
Heck, she thinks she could be the next president of the United States. I'm telling you right now. But I'm going to play you this quick video of her. She's commenting about the Texas redistricting, and I want you to hear what she says here. Check it out.
A lot of noise, but these guys are weak. That's why they're over here trying to bully people. Bullies are always weak. The difference is they expect Democrats to kind of be the nice guys that we are. They expect us to take the punch and say thank you. Well, I am here to tell you, not only are we going to punch back, but we're about to beat you down.
That's right.
Yeah. We are going to win. They understand that we have a Timu Hitler in the White House right now that thinks that he is going to become the dictator of the United States. Well, I got another thing to tell you, sir. I am here to tell you that time is up for playing in our faces. The Democrats are not going to stand for this any longer. We know that we are standing for the people. And so long as we stand for the people, I absolutely believe the people are going to stand for us. They talk a lot of noise, but these guys are weak.
And there you have it, Miss Jasmine Crockett. Now, what I love about this, Ted, of course, she plays the Hitler card. She calls Donald Trump Hitler. You know, that's kind of getting pretty tired. But I love when she says that Donald Trump is basically going to be surprised that the Democrats aren't going to play the nice guys that they usually do. If there's one person on the planet that has seen the not so nice, the nasty side of the Democrats, it is Donald Trump. But I mean, she says they're the nice guys. It's unreal.
You know, these people meaning the Democrats, the socialist communists, they need a reality check. Unfortunately, the problem with that, asking for that, is they don't know what reality is. Their reality is a white, racist, oligarchy country against the downtrodden. And they're always talking about the downtrodden. If we're for the people will be for us. They're going for the wrong base. You know, it's like Ken, your cousin, Ken Martin, the head of the DNC, said that we're expanding. I know, disclaimer, it's not John's cousin. We're expanding our tent. You know, that's always the big tent. We want everybody. We want the moderates, the Democrats. We want this. We even want the socialist, communist Democrats. You know, they're taking anybody. Please join our party so that we can win. But the problem is nobody wants what they don't want to win what they want to give people.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep you posted on this ever unfolding story of the redistricting. We got a few minutes left, Ted. I want to touch base on something because Donald Trump is going to have a press conference today about D.C. He's essentially saying that we have to clean it up. He says, I'm going to make our capital, talking about Washington, D.C., safer and more beautiful than it ever was before. He says the homeless have to move out immediately. We give you places to go. He said the criminals, you don't have to move out. We're going to put you in jail where you belong. I mean, Donald Trump is full bore. I'll show you what motivated him here in a minute. But wow, man, what do you think about what Trump is saying? It's going to be interesting to see what he says today.
You know, again, John, I can't say enough about him and his policies. He's addressing problems that have gone on for way too long. And, you know, they keep wanting to throw more money at it. They, not just Democrats, but people in the Republican side want to throw more money at it. You know, he talked about the homeless in California and San Francisco and Los Angeles. He's talking about building more counseling sessions, getting rid of the drugs, no more needles for the drug addicts. We're going to put you in counseling and treatment. And you're going to see it change. And this is a tough decision that the politicians should have made. But remember, politicians worry more about their next election. Statesmen worry about their next generations. Trump is a statesman, maybe a little crude at times, but his ideals are what this country needs. And he's doing the same thing in D.C. D.C., I mean, just go over the last 5 years, how many carjackings have happened. And then look at how many lawmakers had their cars hijacked while they're in it. And it tells you how out of control it is. There was that news lady, it was last year, I think Carolyn and I were up there, right over by where we live. She got shot by a drive-by shooter. You know, she was just standing on a corner. And I mean, that happens all the time, and you don't want to go out at night there. And, you know, Marion Bowser is a flaming liberal, just like the other ones up there. And she is in that whole mindset. And keep in mind, the workforce in D.C. is 95% against Trump. So here you've got a lady that has a city out of control. Trump says, if you don't get this under control, we're going to federalize it. And I know this has got their heads spinning, and they need to spin until they pop off of their shoulders and be done with them. You think of that young Jewish couple that got shot by some nut job that came from, I think, Texas. Drove halfway across the country to kill these two people at random. And, you know, it's out of control. Society is out of control for the people that think this way. And I think you're going to see it change, especially when Trump says we're going after these 14-year-olds that think they're immune from the law and treat them accordingly.
Well, speaking
I think
of
the
that,
Old Testament works well on this.
Speaking of that, two 15-year-olds have been arrested for a carjacking. You mentioned carjacking. And they jacked this guy. His name is Edward Korstein. People may know him more as, quote, his moniker on X, Big Balls. He was part of Doge. He's a young guy. He's under 20, I think. But I want to show a picture, if we can pull it up, of what happened to him within the last 2 weeks. Have we got that up? Yep. So this is the young man that was known as Big Balls. I think Donald Trump kind of took affection to this young man, the young people. He always really loves young people. And this guy was beat to an inch of his life by two 15-year-olds. I'm not saying that all the other stuff doesn't affect Donald Trump, because D.C. is representative of our country to the world. But I think this one incident really just fired him up. And I'm glad it did, really.
It really did. And it is a wake-up call. Marion Bowser needs to serve the people, not an ideology. And that's what she does. It's anything against Trump or anything against a constitutional republic, she's going to fight. You know, they've been fighting for statehood ever since I've been around. And they don't, and it's like James Carville said, we need to make D.C. a state and Puerto Rico a state. The only reason they want that is for power. It's not for the benefit of the people. It's for the benefit of the new Democrat Party, you know, the Communist Party of the Democrats. And they'll stop at nothing. And there was a reason our founding fathers put D.C. as an administrative state that'll have no representation, because they would be currying too many favors in that. And, you know, John, I'm reading a new book right now. It's called The American Lion. It's about Andrew Jackson. And the arguments he has in there about politicians and what's going on are the same articles or the same arguments we have now. And I read that one on James Madison that was in the early 1800s, same argument. So the point of that is it just repeats itself. And we've got to have people with wisdom and knowledge. And that's why I think we should do a program. And I sent you that video of those intelligent young people at the University of Florida not having a clue about our history and what our country is.
Well, we'll do exactly that, Ted. Well, that's going to be the last word for today. We hope you like what we're doing, share it far and wide. And we're here live every Monday and Friday, and we put stuff in between. Ted, have a good week, and we'll be in touch. Peace out.
We'll see you later. Y'all have a great day. We enjoy talking to you. Share it far and wide. And we'll have some updates on Friday about how you can participate. Take care. Appreciate it. John, have a great day.